they connect and bloom. A bloom, showing if they connect and bloom.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bloom Show. I am your guest host, Melinda Knuth. I am here and he has allowed me to have access to you guys today and to have free reign to share my science with you and to have a good time. So a little bit about myself before I get started and talk to you about the content we have for today. I'm going to say stuff like that because I lecture a lot with my students. I am an assistant professor at North Carolina State University. I also am the host of a new podcast about science in horticulture and floriculture called Growing the Future. And that's how I'm going to frame this episode today, is a little bit like how we share information on my podcast. And today what we're going to really be talking about is we're going to be talking about how we do floral research and the steps on it. Being a research teaching professor at NC State, I've been doing floral research in the industry. Oh goodness, it's been about 10 years now. And so I wanted to give the audience today a taste of how we do research, and then also a special topic that I've had on my brain the past couple of months and that I'm starting to actually look at right now. So you're seeing science in motion today. So let's see, we'll get my presentation all popped up here. Awesome. Okay. So how we do floral research, how does it get done? Well, one of the first things that we do is we actually talk to you, the audience, business owners, different industry members. And sometimes things come about where there's discussion or there's a point made either in a presentation or in a personal conversation with someone. And that sparks an interesting question. And if you know anything about scientists, the only thing we do is question things. We question things constantly. And it's not because we're mistrustful, it's simply curiosity. It's a distinct innate desire for us to understand others and understand the world. And so this is the presence of how we actually start with a topic. So one of the topics that I've been particularly interested in is related to how consumers start their experience. Now, we know that people buy plants and people buy cut flowers for different reasons. And if you ask them, what is the reason that you buy this product? It can be due to color. You know, there's this distinct color, or I'm buying it because this person's favorite color is blue or purple or red, whatever it may be. It can also be because of the size of the bloom. Oh, I'm trying to decide between these two flowers, and this bloom is much bigger than this other bloom. It could also be species driven, where I need to buy flowers for my special one on Valentine's Day. And I know that roses represent beauty and passion and all these other things. And so I'm choosing this flower based on the emotion that I want to evoke, and also the species, because that's related to culturally to the species or the color. There's also the ease of access to the flowers. So with this, it's, well, how can I access it? And sometimes it comes down to, okay, well, I don't have a ton of time, so I choose convenience, or I want very high quality and I have the time, and so I'm going to choose this other location, or I physically can't be at the location to pick up the flowers or to choose the flowers, so I will go with perhaps an online option, or an option that I can visually see and then select. And so there's different reasons that people buy these flowers. But there's another option that's come to my attention in the past year that may be worth exploring. And that is the option of scent. And by scent, the stink, the good stuff, the stuff that you are that wafts by your nose and you're like, oh man, that's great. And this has come to my attention through a couple of conversations, and also related to some of the more scented flowers in our field, where a designer will get up and talk about, excuse me, a designer will get up and talk about, I have chose this flower and it has all of the elements that I'm seeking to put into this design, and there's an extra layer of experience to this, which is scent. So you can see it, you can smell it, and so it adds to that experience. And so this is where the idea sparks from. So, okay, there's different reasons that people choose flowers, and there's so many different purposes to it, but the smell may be more important than we understand. And so this is a question I've been kind of pinging around in my brain, and if you know me, I have lots of ideas pinging around in my brain, but this one in particular was like, maybe we can understand this, because we know from some of the visual research that colleagues of mine and I, like Charlie Hall, Alicia Reen, Bridget Behe, Heike Calcatron, we have looked at different visual elements and how that predicts buying behavior and how integral that is into things. But what if the different senses also? What about hearing? What about smelling? What about tasting? Ooh, all these different things that we don't understand. Before we continue on, I did want to draw your attention to the two pictures that we have. What I did is I was looking at pictures to describe visually what I'm trying to portray to you today. And all I did was type into Google scent. And when I typed into Google scent, these two pictures were the first 2 out of 4 that showed up, which is amazing, because when you think of scent, what do people think of? Flowers. So is there potentially something that we can explore here? So one of the things that I think is important to know, and when we, again, in research, we go, okay, here's this question, scent. Then there's a follow question. Well, why? Why scent? Why is this important? Why are we talking about this? Why do I care? So then we start to get into understanding the actual concept of the topic. And with this, I'm going to actually go into it with you. So let's understand the concept of scent. So how does this relate to us? How does this relate to our world? And then how can we engage that with other people and then do science around it? So one of the key features about scent, so why do plants have scent? And the main reason is for pollinators. So a lot of research has been done to look at, well, what is the purpose of scent? Yes, it smells good to us, but we're not the primary target when it comes to smell, especially with flowers. The primary targets are those that you actually see on the screen here. And this was a really interesting paper that was done by Aros in 2015. And this seems to be evolutionary driven with different flowers. So they have a specific pollinator or set of pollinators for that particular plant. And the different shape of the flower relates to what type of pollinator is attracted or what it's trying to attract. So the tubular flowers are more likely to have different long-nosed, or in this example, long-beaked pollinators, where maybe they have more of a flat basis to them, and they have a lot of sticky pollen, and they want to get stuck to these really fuzzy pollinators. Or maybe even they have a really yummy nectar, and so they attract different insects or different bats, different examples like that. And they have this really yummy nectar that attracts the pollinator there to eat the nectar, and then pollination can happen in subsequent fashion because they are attracted to that little treat that they get. So the sweet little treat that is nectar for plants. So the whole purpose of the scent is another way to draw in these pollinators to guide them to the source of this nectar and this pollen. And this has been well documented by entomologists. This is very well known. What's interesting, and I didn't know this before really looking into this topic before, is that also sometimes these scents, which are also known as volatile organic compounds or VOCs, sometimes these VOCs can actually repel or be unattractive to off-target pollinators. For example, little fungi. So this is not fungi as in mushrooms, but fungi as in this little guy who is robbing this poor honeysuckle of its nectar. So because it's chewing on the side of the tubular flower instead of inserting in and going past the different organs of the flower, instead it's just going to chew through the side, and then it does highway robbery. So there's actually some evidence to show that scent also can be repellent. And you may be familiar with this through perhaps there's a particular smell, or you could call them a stink. There's a stink that you don't particularly like. Well, maybe you're part of the nectar robbing group. There's different reasons that these flowers choose to have these scents that are attractive or unattractive. So there's different purposes. What's also interesting is that these different fragrances, so I'm using many words here, but these are all collectively in line with the smell. These different fragrances there's many of them, and in combination is how you get these distinct smells that the flower gives off. So it's not just one unique compound that the flower is giving off. It could be giving off actually up to 50 or 100 VOCs, which combine together with your cute little nose is what you recognize as, a honeysuckle smell, a rose smell, even a lavender smell. So different reasons. We also know that not only does scent play a role in the not only attracting pollinators, so in that part, but sometimes plants and flowers have a smell because they are trying to protect themselves. So it's actually an immune response that they do. And I'm going to have some pretty distinct examples a little bit later when we're talking about the whys. But for now, it has to do with antimicrobial and anti-herbivore activity, so things chewing on them, as well as preventing anything from happening to protect their little reproductive organs. Because what flowers want to do, and the reason we have flowers, is for them to pass on their biological material. They're beautiful, they have good smell, sometimes they taste good, and it's all for the purpose of continuing on the flower species, which is pretty cool. This all is in line with different other adaptive reasons. So the reasons that flowers have different smells is just with their other floral adaptations. And the words here aren't particularly important, but I do want to show the distinct flower difference between these two. So for example, having a flat-headed flower and the color, the shape, the size, as well as the geographic location, as well as the smell, they all work together to create these adaptations. And so that's one reason why we have different smells of flowers. If there was only one unique smell that worked for all pollinators, I'm sure flowers, that's the only smell that we would have. But that's not the case, because there's many different pollinators around the globe, as well as many different adaptive traits that these flowers are trying to accomplish. And so because of that, that's the reason that we have smell. So the reason of why, so why do we even have smell, is pretty distinct. And we understand, okay, it can be protective. It also can be to be attractive or avoidant, depending on what you want. And I'm sure you could do the same. You could put on a really stinky stuff and you'd be very avoidant of other people around you. Or you could smell very good and attract people towards you because you smell good. So really similar basis if you want to take it into a human sort of context. So then it becomes the how. So how does this work? So we have the why. So, okay, we know why, but then how does this work? And this is where we get into the concept. So we're going to get sciencey here. So hold your butts, everybody. I'm going to explain. But we have these different compounds, these volatile organic compounds. There are different categories that within that. So you can actually categorize within the volatile organic compounds. And one that is the stinkiest and probably the most distinct, and that I think that you're going to relate to the most, which also happens to do with floral scent, is terpenes. What is a terpene? Well, terpenes are these volatile compounds. So it's one of the bins within the VOCs. What they do for the plant is they play this really vital plant immune system response. See how that relates with smell? So we're talking about this category. It sometimes can make them unpalatable. And for some terpenes, they actually are toxic to different animals, including sometimes us. But there's many of them that we are attracted to and we love and we think are delicious and we think they smell amazing. So this is what the different animals, so insects, birds, us, this is what we're smelling are these terpenes that are volatilizing in the air and are able to be breathed in through the nose. And so this is also what gives a lot of fruits, especially that aroma and the taste that you are experiencing. And we'll talk about a little bit later as well when it comes to smells. So how does that work for human beings? What we know is that taste actually has mostly to do with your nose. So you can plug your nose and you can't taste as well. And maybe you did that when you were a little kid. I may have done that a couple times. You may have done that when you were a little kid because it actually works, because it shuts off the ability of the taste, which actually is scent. So going up into your nose and then being registered by your brain. And so a lot of these aromas and these tastes that we have, especially with fruits and flowers, these are all terpenes. These are all wonderful things that we are very attracted to. And as you can see on the screen, these are all different examples of different terpenes. And some of these you may recognize. So for example, pine. There's actually a terpene for pine. Or if you like beer, hops. Hops they're very fragrant, and it's because of the terpenes. A lot of different herbs, such as pepper. Pepper has very distinct terpenes. Lavender, as well as, I think this is supposed to be hydrangea. I'm not sure. It's a cute picture, so whatever. We also have mint, as well as thyme, lemon, and some of the more woody smells. These are all terpenes that these plants and these flowers are giving off that give them their distinct smells. And if you want to look into specific terpenes, we're not going to go too deeply into this. This is just to if you want to have great dinner conversation, you can just bring up all these different terpenes that you know, and people are going to think you're incredibly smart. But for example, we have this myrcene, which is more that herbal smell, and that comes from hops and mangoes and lemongrass. They all have that specific terpene. Or we have pinene, and you notice how these all end in "ene"? Because they're part of the terpene category of volatile chemicals. So they're all going to end in the "ene". So we also have pinene, which is pine. So if you love the smell of pine, you love pinene. We also have, like, for example, more of the peppery or the citrus or even the fruity. So depending on what you like, you can actually categorize it by the volatile chemical that's popping up. This is also what you're smelling in candles and fragrances, or perfumes, I should say, body sprays, etc. These are what you're smelling are these volatile chemicals. They're usually put into, for perfumes, they're usually put into some sort of oil or alcohol base, and that's what's able to keep them from volatilizing and evaporating out of the little bottle before you can use it. But this is the same stuff that you're smelling there. And how does this work? So again, we're getting into the sciencey, so hold on here. So we have what you can, you put it in the food in your mouth or you smell it through your nose. What we have here is actually, there's these little nerve hairs, which are nerve endings, that are at the top of your nasal passage. That's why when your nasal passage is inflamed around springtime, when you have allergies, you have a lesser smellability. It's because everything's inflamed and your nerve endings aren't able to access the volatile chemicals in your nasal passage as easily. So what's happening is you breathe it in or you put it in your mouth and you chew it, and it comes up here and is accessed by these nerve endings. It then goes to this little part of your brain called the olfactory bulb. Now, what does the olfactory bulb do? What it does is it is at the very front. So now we're at the picture on the far right. It's at the very front of your brain. And this is the part that is sensing things. So this is where your eyes are being sensed, are bringing in data. This is where your nose is bringing in data. And this is called the orbitofrontal cortex. So boop, right up here. Just because it's taken into that part of your brain doesn't mean that it's translated. So just because you see and the data is taken in at the front part of your brain, it's actually reviewed and assessed at the back part of your brain. Also, for scent, so just because it's taken in at this olfactory bulb at the very front of your brain, it's actually reviewed and looked at in the middle and in deeply the center of your brain. So this is the part where the memories and other functions of your brain are happening. So your limbic system. So again, super sciencey, so hold with me here. So this is where this is happening in your brain. And other animals, for example, this is a rat brain. They have these same sensory areas. So that's why, for example, your dog associates certain smells with positive or negative connotations, because a smell could be related to a memory. And this happens a lot with human beings as well. So, gotta go back to my notes. I got a little bit off here. Oh, that's what I was going to talk about. So sorry. See, I go off on these little tangents. And since we're live, I have to be very careful that I don't go off on too many little tangents. So other terpenes, before we continue on, if you're familiar with menthol, if you like menthol from peppermints or spearmints, etc., that's a type of terpene. So is the eucalyptus smell. So if you really like that, or if you like cannabis, that also is a terpene. So all of those different smells are coming from different terpene families. So with our brains and our understanding, this is called our olfactory system. Olfactory, there we go. And what we know is that all of what you consider flavor in your foods is actually smell. And this was discovered and well understood by the Harvard Olfactory Lab. They've done extensive work looking at this from a human behavior perspective. And what's interesting is that smell is so uniquely attached to and processed in the brain's limbic system, which here I'll go back there so we can look at it. So it's so connected to that there is no question now. Before we said, maybe, but by now there's no question that emotions and memories are processed in the same area of the brain that scents are also processed. And so a lot of scents can actually be triggered to vivid memories and evokes really special feelings within humans. And this is a very unique phenomenon that mammals have, and it's very interesting. And so what we know with the limbic system, just for reference, is this is where the limbic system is where we determine within our brain that we need to eat and drink. This is also where we determine that we need to reproduce, care for young, and react to our surroundings. So this is the first step in the fight or flight reflex that the brain does. this is the area of the brain that has the amygdala and the hippocampus and those areas that are responding emotionally. And emotion's not bad. This is part of the human system that we are experiencing. So all of this is related to smell and what the brain is able to pick up out of the nasal cavity and from the mouth. And so we know that those are stored together. So smell can evoke really deep memories or very strong feelings within people. And that's really interesting in particular because some of the research that was done also by Harvard showed that people tend to smell in color. And in particular, I'm going to read this passage from the Harvard article about it, where there's a demonstration that was done connecting the pieces of paper dipped in scents that were then handed to audience members by this Harvard scientist. Like most people, her listeners associated citrus-flavored mandarin with colors of orange, yellow, and green. And when smelling vetiver, I always struggle with that word, sorry guys, which is a very grassy scent. It actually comes from grass roots from a plant native to India. Audience members envisioned green or brown. And so also different smells can be associated with color. And this also is unique because if you taste something, that doesn't necessarily evoke a color. When you hear something, it doesn't necessarily evoke a color, though there is a small portion of the population that it does. When you see something, that doesn't necessarily trigger a color. This is one of the unique different experiences we have as human beings that we can actually associate colors with, and so super interesting. That's also why, so we have this whole interconnectedness between the limbic system and scent. There's also why there is a lot of scientists, a whole slew of them, if you will, looking at aromatherapy and connecting the parasympathetic nervous system with scent. So how can we connect together the rest mode that our brain does with different scents? And I'll leave it to you to dive into that topic because that's a whole nother thing. And outside the scope of my my discussion for today. But there's been a lot of research into that area as well, as how can we hack the brain to be calm, perhaps by using scent. And so that's essentially what aromatherapy is attempting to do, is let's hack the brain, let's trick it into being calm or being intuitive or having different moods in essence. What's also, I think, interesting from the human perspective is that some research has also shown that sight and smell, when it comes to memory, don't appear to be different, which I think would be really, really interesting to look at in cut flowers specifically, because there's not a lot of research done in this area. We've done a ton of research on visual things with eye tracking, and shout out to American Floral Endowment for funding a bunch of that research. But we know very little about scent related to scent and sight related to choosing of cut flowers. This space is largely undiscovered, which is why we're looking at it. What's also interesting is, and I keep saying that over and over because this is a topic that I am really, really interested in. So that's why I keep saying, well, this is interesting and that's interesting, is the first odor that you observe has a lasting effect on your brain. So if I were to go into a candle shop, the first candle I pick up, I would have a 75% chance of remembering that distinct smell because it registers right away in my brain. Each of the smells after that, not so much. So, something to keep in the back of your noggin, literally, because that's where you process it, to think about for later. Okay. So with the concept of different smells and also what their the terpenes that are being delivered, depending on the plant it is, this is how we come into the whole process of perfumes. And I'm going to talk very briefly about this because this is a special interest of mine. So if you're curious, you can always come talk to me about perfumes. And with this is where we get the different nodes. So we have the top, the heart, and the base, and the persistence of the terpene and how it develops with your skin. So all of that is together. But I think what's of interest here is that you can actually potentially influence people with smell. You can influence how they perceive you as friendly, as mysterious, as clean, as a particular personality trait, whatever it may be, just from the smell that you have. And if you are the first unique smell that this person has experienced in the day, they're going to remember that with your face. And this is something that we can potentially hack if we're talking about our floral shops or if we're talking about our floral products. What's really interesting, I said it again. What's unique here as well is that when we're talking about specifically with floral scent in human beings, we've been wanting to change the way that we smell. So perfume wise, for a very long time. And this painting is showing a rose oil anointment. This is taken from Greece in BC time period. I can't remember the exact year. But the point being with this is we have wanted to smell perfumey like flowers for a very long time. We've wanted to smell like flowers. We have enjoyed floral scents very, very long period of time as human beings. And historically speaking, it's mostly been Middle Eastern native flowers because this is where a lot of this began and was established. When we look at more common, so like more modern day, these are more research scented flowers that we're now seeing present. And this is where we're getting into, okay, this is an interesting idea for research. So we have, okay, here's this interesting topic. What is it? Why should we be interested in it? What does this have to do with human beings? Now we're getting into, well, what have other people done recently, as in like the past 10 years, in this area of research? Like, is it worth me, Melinda Knuth, dipping my toe into to explore this? And this is where we see other literature that's more recent. And a lot of the common research flowers are ones that are really commonly found in the marketplace today. And this bouquet holds quite a few of them. So there's tulips, carnations, chrysanthemums, lilies, and roses. These are the most researched scented flowers. Almost all of these studies were not done in the US. They were done by different researchers in particularly Italy was one country, but particularly South America. And I came across a really interesting study here. I'm going to find, what is his name? So the researcher's name was Eros. That's the lead author on the pub. And they were looking at different traits that Chilean consumers find desirable for Alstroemeria, which super cool. So you see all these different Alstroemerias here, and they have their own distinct smell. So these have not been bred out of smell, so they still have scent to them. And they're interested to see which of these is actually desirable among the Chilean consumers. Nothing like this has been done in the US. And so, okay, we have a basis to potentially to look into this from more of a marketing perspective. I'm not a sensory scientist, but if there are any, or if you know any, let me know. What we also know is that with these different scents, and this was also shown in this study with the Chilean consumers, is that human beings have different thresholds of volatile chemicals. So what we find desirable is perceived differently. And what I perceive as smelling amazing or smelling delightful, you may consider stinky and heady and gross. And so when we talk about this human behavior component, now we get into, okay, well, what has been looked at and how has it been looked at? And are we asking perceptual questions where people are looking at it from the perspective of, I like this, yes or no? Are we asking detailed questions, or have past research looked at detailed questions? And can we get more into the behavioral components of the actual physical response that the person is having to the scent? That space is also largely unknown. Not very much is done. A lot of these studies that have been done are focused on perceptual. Do you like this or do you not? And you are answering verbally. Nothing wrong with that, but there's much more to be done in this area to explore these types of questions. What we know as well is that humans, so what we find attractive depends on person to person. We also know that these terpenes are comprised of both primary and these secondary metabolites. So it's not just the first stink that you smell, the pyramid of the perfume where you're smelling different smells at different times. That's exactly what happens with flowers. So then that's also pulls into the question of like, okay, how do we observe what is a good smell and how is it consistent across a species? And the short answer to that is we don't particularly know. And we're figuring that out, or scientists in general are figuring that out. I hope to be part of that group. Of the same study of ultramarine, you can see here, these are just some. This was not the full list. This is just some of the different volatile organic compounds that were observed being released from the flower. So this is just some of them. This is not all of them. And so there's an incredible array of different smells that can be created based on these combinations and when the flower is giving them off. So we get to the point of, okay, well, in the US, roses are by far the most researched. They are researched the most visually. They are researched the most breeding-wise. They are researched the most when it comes to scent. And I could find 2 studies that looked at floral scent related to roses. So even that, not a lot, but this is what we got. And likely this is due to our interconnected relationship, like our historical love of flowers as an American society. But this is also culturally different depending on who you talk to. There was a study that was done. This was it was either a Greek or an Italian group, and they were looking at wild rose smell versus cultivated rose smell, and potentially has that changed over time? And the answer is yes. A great example to show you outside of the floral space, but related to scent and taste, is banana. There's different cultivars of bananas, over 20 that I can think of, that are available right now in worldwide, probably more than I'm aware of, to be honest with you. But the original banana taste and smell is the Laffy Taffy flavor that you come across. And if you're like, that is disgusting and it tastes nothing like a banana that I have at the grocery store, it's because they are 2 different cultivars. They are 2 different types of bananas. So they give off 2 different combinations of terpenes. And the reason for that has to do with disease pressure, and they had to change the common banana from what it was to the current one. But this is just an example of banana, the most commonly consumed fruit in the world. The same thing holds true for most of the flowers and most other fruits that we see internationally and specifically in the US as well. So this also changes over time. So there's a lot to unpack here when it comes to scent. It changes. It varies depending on how old the flower is. It varies on the way that people perceive them. So there's a lot of challenges. And when we look at past literature, there leaves a lot to be desired in understanding. So we get to the what if, and this is where in the research world, this is where we build our studies off of, is this what if. These are hypotheses. These are not written as hypotheses, but they become hypotheses. So one of the questions is, will people pay more money for a scented versus an unscented flower? If they look exactly the same, if they last exactly the same amount of time, one is scented, one is not, will they pay more? Or are they going to pay more attention to those flowers? Meaning they're more likely to spend more time looking at it. They're more likely then to potentially buy it. And then they're a more likely product to sell. We don't know. So if everything was held constant, but unscented versus scented, would people be more likely to buy it more scented flowers more often? Or would they be more likely to pay more money? Or does neither hold true? And this is a big question, unanswered. Another category is, what if people don't like the smell? What if you spend years breeding the most beautiful flower, let's say a rose, a most beautiful rose, and you spend all this time making it smell good and it has a consistent smell? What if most people don't like it? Then what? And how do you determine how most people don't like it? So that becomes a research question. So not to mention what if it's too strong? So what is the correct strength of scent that should be perceived? We know that a lot of lilies smell very strongly for a short period of time, or I think a short period of time. Whereas there could be roses where it has a more subtle smell to it, but it smells for a long period of time, almost the entire time that it sits in a vase. So we have all these questions, and this is where we take these questions based off of the what, the hows, the what have people done in the past. We look at all of this and we say, okay, this is what we know and this is what we don't know. And from here, this is what we take, and we go and we make studies where we say, okay, to answer this question, this is how we're going to answer it. And we base it off of question banks from historical studies. And sometimes we create new questions that we pre-test and then we use in the specific study. So like particularly questions related to money, then we test with a panel group of consumers. And so that's how we primarily do science. But that's the basis of the front end of how we do it. And it's a lot of philosophizing. I think I said that word right. We spend a lot of time thinking about, well, why? Well, why? Well, why? Well, how? What's this? What's that? Why do we care? What are we doing? We spend a ton of time doing that and reading and talking to people and connecting dots and trying to understand things. And that's how we've gone to this basis that we have with science. And that's how it will probably continue for the next millennia or so. We ask lots of questions and then we try to answer what we can. And some remains unknown, or maybe we just answer a tiny piece, and that tiny piece builds to the greater puzzle that maybe we answer in 10, 20 years. It just depends on what we're doing. But that's kind of the conclusion here is, well, now what? Now, when it comes to trends and such, this is one of the things that was that we advertised for in the podcast for today is, well, what are top marketing trends that are going to be headed into 2025 and continue? And related to scent and related to a lot of buying, I think a major thing to consider, and this is going to tap into more of your limbic system, so more of your feelies, is creating connectedness around products. So creating that impact, creating that connection to strong feelings, to memories, to comfort, to stability. These different things will become really important, especially in an era of uncertainty. And within the past year, there's been some uncertainty around the world with different conflicts and different ideas that pop up. And with that in mind, one of the things that grounds people is that connectedness with nature, with each other, with their feelings and emotions related to their cognition. And all of this will become very important if it has not already. And I encourage you to try to tap into this as you are thinking about how you're going to market your product, or you plan to connect with your consumer, is through that connectability that floral products are able to do. Because when people think smell, they think flowers when a lot of the time, or food, but they think flowers. When you think of scent, or when you smell a certain thing, it can trigger deep feelings, deep memories, and can change your mood. And so this is going to become really important if it's not already in our society. So that's kind of where we're at. That's what I think is related to this topic, and why we're interested in how research develops. Like, that's how we do research, is a lot of that basis here. And so good news for everybody. We actually got funding to look at scent related to ornamental products, and cut flowers is one of them. And so don't get too excited. I'm not going to be able to answer like some of these huge overarching questions. But one of the things that myself, as well as my colleagues, Alicia Reed, Bridget Behe, and Pat Huddleston, one of the things we're looking at is, what are words that trigger that appeal towards smell? So how should we talk about smell with marketing of cut flowers, with ornamental product, with herbs? How should we talk about that in our marketing messaging? What are words that are connected with that? And I hope from there that we can continue in the segment of scent to understand this a lot better with consumers, because I think that there's a lot of potential here. And I may be wrong, but the only way we find out is by doing research, and then we find out what we can do. So with that, I'm going to leave you with a couple of lingering questions that I hope some of you may consider. And that would be, how can you incorporate scent into your business? How can you think about it? Or can you think, is there any good smells that you think people associate with your business? Or one of the other things you can think of is the opposite way. When someone walks into your shop, is there a positive smell? Or is there a neutral or a negative smell? So things for you to think about. Secondly is, should there be more scent breeding in cut flowers? Should that be more of a priority? And I think the way that becomes a priority, if you want that, is to communicate that with breeders. So we are a very connected system within cut flowers. If that's something that you want to seek, or you see that your consumers want, it's important to communicate that back up the supply chain to breeders within our industry who are creating new product, and explain that's an important trait that you would want. It takes a long time to breed, so it's not going to come instantaneously, but perhaps in a couple of years there can be something that's wonderfully scented and ready for the market. So, all right. Oh, see, I had a slide on this. Oh my goodness. So I had this really pretty slide. What do you think about that? And I'm going to leave that up to you guys to think about. I have my opinions, but also this is a research-based podcast, so we are going to kind of leave it where it's at there. Oh, and oh goodness. Well, I'm gonna move that along. Okay. So with that, I think that hey Sahid, do you want to come back in and we'll wrap this thing up?
The bloom, showing if they connect and bloom. The bloom, showing if they connect and bloom.
Oh, hey. Oh no, I think you're muted. I can't hear you.
Thanks for having me on your show.
Hey, yeah, thanks for being a guest on my podcast.
Thanks so much. Melinda, that was awesome.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop thinking about just the marketing potential when it comes to that. Obviously there's a lot of questions to be had.
Oh my gosh,
But I know that when I go to a certain hotel, there's a certain smell that reminds me of the
yeah.
hotel.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what does that smell do? It causes comfort, right?
Mhm.
It makes me feel like I'm home, I'm welcome, it's clean, it's nice. So I could see the great potential in my head. I was on my phone Googling scent,
Smells. Yeah.
scent osmosis or machines that you could put all around your shop,
Yep.
which has oils of roses, so that it could, right when someone walks by, then they walk by again, and then another angle.
Exactly.
I could just imagine, a barbecue pit. One of their tricks is the minute you walk in. Yesterday we walked into a barbecue spot and I could smell the smoke.
Oh,
Right?
yep. Mm-hmm.
Boy, did that make me more hungry, and did that make my experience a lot better? Like, was I hungrier? Yes. Was I more satisfied when I ate it, and did the food tastes better? I'm
Yep.
pretty
Because you're
sure
ready. Yeah.
you're in that mix, right? So I can really see the marketing potential of this if it's used in an intelligent way. When it comes to scents of flowers, there was many years the business of flowers took out the scent because of what you said in the beginning, right?
Oh,
It
that's
brought
cool.
it brought insects, right?
Yep.
So when insects are around, then you have to fumigate and you have to
Yep.
manage the insects, not to damage the flowers. And I think there was another reason as well. I think it's within the box. It might cause something if the
Mm-hmm.
scent's too strong. But that's why. But there has been a movement of sorts, or a couple people that have started creating your standard rose. Because remember, we have garden roses, we have standard roses, we have, I think there was even like ranunculus that didn't have scent, but now it's coming with scent. I might be making that up, but they're kind of trying to implement that because they're also pest resistant.
Yep.
So to do that, then they're pest resistant. Let's bring back the smell, because you don't want to create a rose, let's say, that has a great scent and then great bugs,
Mm-hmm.
because then you're gonna
You're
have
like,
great.
oh, here you go. Yeah.
Yeah, here it's a buffet for them. You're like, here,
Yeah.
you're basically putting a lighthouse around that rose to bring those bad deviant little insects for us in our
Yeah.
industry.
The
They're not bad.
robbery. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great in the world. Their bees are awesome. I love them bees.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons. But when I was thinking about it, I'm like, man,
Mhm.
it'll be so cool to try that test that you're doing at
Yes.
one flower shop or at one supermarket, where people pass by and just do a little spray of,
Yeah. Do that.
and then a
Yeah.
little, oh, okay, see what happens. The
Yeah.
cameras nowadays, motion detectors, there's so much we can do to see if that really will cause more foot traffic in that
Mhm.
direction. You
Yes.
know?
A quick comment there. If you like Cinnabon,
Yeah,
Cinnabon
of course.
actually pumps
Yeah.
out cinnamon smell outside of their stores to attract people in. So it works. Now, will it work for cut flowers specifically? That's the question.
I'm going to be a haysayer or naysayer, right? It's like,
Yeah.
hey, yeah, I think it would, because, one of my earliest memories is the smell. Not everybody loves it. The smell of gyp.
Yep.
And I love the smell of gyp, and it brings back memories. If I smell it again, I kind of stop and, and I'll smell it.
Yeah.
So I think, nay, hey, yeah,
Yeah.
hey sayer. For me, I just came up with that, by the way. But
Oh
a
yeah.
hey sayer is someone that's
The haysayers.
yeah. I think the hey sayer is someone that would say, hey, yeah, heck yeah. Why won't it work? I think something that human nature tends to do is we put more roadblocks
Mm-hmm.
to potential ideas than we do curiosity.
I
Right.
agree.
So
Mm-hmm.
why not be curious and say, hey, there's a huge chance that this may work. Let's give it a try. In the industry, I have seen scented sticks,
Oh, good. Okay.
which have been sticks that are green. They're almost like an incense, and they're put into bouquets, especially Christmas stuff, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
There's also rose scented. That's why at the moment the naysayers may be saying it never works because we've tried it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 15 years ago, you might have tried it with a stick that you had to put your nose to it. What about as hotels do and restaurants do?
Yeah, more
There's
holistic.
diffusers that you could put on your AC.
Yeah.
Right? There's a diffuser you can attach to your AC system, costs about $700. You could attach to your AC system and you could put rose scented. The minute you walk into a flower shop, you just smell the roses. If you had an option, if you had a thought about buying, now becomes a decision of buying. I think we might have a comment. Give me a quick second.
Ooh, do we?
Yes. Not sure what Danny this is, but we have a comment and it says, let me just make sure we could say it. Yeah, exactly. So scent was taken out for longevity. Flower blooms at the end of their lives. An open cut. There you go. Great information. Also for the oils, brews, and flowers when put into a box. So it was a combination of things, right? It was obviously the insects and also for the oils, brews, the flowers when put in a box.
That makes sense with the petals.
100%. I knew it was something with the boxes. And now, and as they're saying, is I know what Danny this is now, and I'll tell you why. And scent was taken out for longevity because I guess it does bloom open quicker, and also because of pollination, right? So when a flower blooms, it opens,
pollinated, then it'll,
and then they have what the bees want right in there. So this is Danny, the man. Sorry to give you a shout out, but Danny Dueso. Chanel number 5 comes from Fancy Roses still to this day. And I know that because he's a perfume connoisseur.
Oh, Danny, we need to meet because I also am a connoisseur.
I mean connoisseur. This guy's looking high and near in different countries for scent. So
hey, real quick, Danny, you should go to Cologne and you should go to the Farina Museum of Fragrance. He's one of the original fragrance families in Germany, which is super cool. So Cologne and the Cologne Museum.
If this is a Danny, I'm guessing he's gonna say I know already.
Oh, you probably will. Yeah. So I just got back from there. It was incredible.
That's awesome. The guy did that. And then we have why not to order a scented topper or a logo piece or a sticker and put on a bouquet scent may depend on the type of design, purpose, and consumer archetype. Victoria Alexandrova. I'd like to know where you're from, Victoria. But so that's been done, right? There has been stickers that are done. Again, there's been a stick that kind of hides between everything. I think I've seen also like a little, not pine, but those little balls with scented pine smells, and then they stick it too. So there has been ways that people have done that, which is pretty cool. Any comments that you have, Melinda, when it comes to that?
I think yes. The why not to order, I agree. Why not order? I think that perhaps it may not have worked in the past because of the concept of what we were talking about with terpenes is sometimes they float away quickly. And so perhaps it's not as lasting, but perhaps with modern technology, and I don't know this, so this is me suggesting maybe with
innovating.
New innovation that perhaps these scented sticks and scented stickers and stuff could be stronger or last longer to reach the consumer when they're buying or when they're trying to experience it. So I think that exactly, why not? Try it out and see.
Why not? My suggestion or my opinion, my thought would be that it's been tried, but because you have to
get right there,
you have to get right there to smell it. It wasn't as successful as the person that was investing the 10 cents or 5 cents. Right? It did not increase the sale. I'm going to assume this is a hypothesis. Right? This is an assumption.
Hypothesis.
I don't know if it is or not, but this is an assumption. Now, my hypothesis, if I'm saying this correctly, doctor, is that if you walk in a room, you're hit with a scent of roses, you're hit with a scent of roses, you're hit with a scent of roses, there is going to be a percentage of chance that person stops.
Yes. I'm going to hypothesis. Yeah.
Right. And in a percentage, 10%, 5%, 15%, a percent that will increase that person's engagement with the flower. And then if that person leaves the same way they came, the percentage of stoppage will increase. I sound like a scientist. I'm pretty smart. You make people smarter, doctor.
Good.
You make people smart. So I believe that then you're doubling your chances of that person stopping. Now, the next time they come and you hit them up with that smell again, the percentage will increase, especially if it's a customer that never has purchased flowers, but now it reminds them of their mom. My mom used to always wear rose scented, so now it reminds them of their mom. So chances are that it's worth the investment, worth giving it a try. So let me know if you want to try something there with a supermarket. It'd
Oh
be really
yeah.
cool, or even a shop. Let's find a shop and try it. I'd love, let me know.
Yeah.
I'd love to report that.
We're
Tell me your thoughts.
We are right now just starting out with the beginning phases. So probably a little bit later, like in a year, I'll be like, hey, what do you think about this? And
Yeah,
that would be really cool.
that'd be super cool to bring up this again. And that gives me an opportunity to mention that Melinda Knuth will be joining us for little snippets like this
Oh yeah.
throughout a couple months, and hopefully a monthly or bi-monthly column in our newsletter. The reason being is, one, the science of flowers is real, right? Science of marketing is real. And secondly, Melinda has an awesome podcast that she's starting with. So we wanted to give a platform to share with our audience of what Melinda's doing, because this show is for the flower industry, for the floral community, by the floral community. So Melinda, can you share what your podcast is all about?
Sure. Yeah. So it's called Growing the Future. It's going to be available on all different podcasting platforms, all the most common ones. And we are going to talk about the science behind different concepts within horticulture and floriculture. And the purpose of that is I get a lot of questions in my inbox and like my email inbox, but I'm not necessarily able to answer them all fully. So the intention of these episodes is to dive deeply for 30 minutes or so into different topics, kind of like what I did today, to explain different things within horticulture and floriculture, in marketing, in econ, economics, I should say, not the shorthand, and consumer behavior, and to understand that more and to share that information.
And we're partnering together so that that podcast could be created into some sort of blog or column on a monthly basis, or as often as she does it, so to be shared with our audience, so that content's consumed in different ways, right? But we do encourage you, and please check out Melinda Knuth, Dr. Melinda Knuth, or Melinda Knuth PhD. She's on LinkedIn.
Yes,
so
I am.
make sure to keep an eye, and we'll be also resharing and help her kind of spread the word on that podcast, because with more information comes unity and better decisions. And if we can increase sales by putting diffusers everywhere, let's do it. So Danny, this is a topic that he loves. So that's also why Chanel number 5 can't be done synthetically, right? Yep. And then he's also saying, there you go, Danny, you know what's up. Freesia,
yes,
limited Dutch tuberoses, ugly flowers, Genestra, mimosa, all these are pretty much gone for price. What do you mean by that, Danny?
Oh yeah, what does that mean?
But I think these things do have smell, right? Freesia does have smell for sure. Tuberoses have smell. Genestra has smell. But I remember the other day, someone, I think it was like Delphinium, and it has smell, and they've taken it away, and we've totally forgotten. Let me see here. Open flowers equal old flowers, open, etc. It's really difficult line.
Maybe, but he might be saying they've gone for price. So they've gone, instead of scent, they've gone for prices, maybe?
I think he's saying too expensive.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, really expensive to breed. Okay.
Yeah, I guess so. With scent, I guess we're decoding you here, Danny. But thank you for
doing research on what Danny's saying.
Thanks for chiming it in. But hey, you ever want to talk fragrance? Reach out to Danny. Awesome. Let me know. I'll connect you. The guy, it's been crazy. He loves his scents. It's very it's a big topic for him. So. Any last words you want to say before we get into shopkeeping or just new updates?
Thanks for letting me host. Thanks for being my guest. And yeah, thank you for everybody for listening today.
That was awesome. And thank you for spending your time and putting together that presentation. I think that, it might have, look, you struck a chord with Danny, right? So it's something that if we really look at it with curious ears, we're going to find something that we could use for us, right? And for our industry. And I look forward to seeing the evolution of this study that you're going to be doing, the marketing of flowers, why it makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah,
now it makes sense. I like that.
Why it makes sense. I just posted that on LinkedIn, by the way, so you can take it.
That's awesome.
Why it makes sense, right? Because again, is that connection, that experience. It's all about that. Now, let me talk about a couple of things. Just hang out with me because you're a host as well. So, we're going to have Flora on the show next week. Discover how Colombian floriculture continues to lead the global market through cutting-edge innovation and world-class logistics on June 10th. And that's with ProColombia. ProColombia is an organization that supports the commerce of flowers and commerce of the business in Colombia. And they're going to be on. It's not ProFlora, it's ProColombia. I believe one of the directors is going to be on talking about what Colombia is doing to help ProFlora and help these organizations to sell more flowers and what Mother's Day resulted in for them. And then we're also going to have on July 8th at 1 p.m. the Bloom Show with Joe Donzetzi, another correspondent. So Melinda Knuth is a correspondent of ours, as she's going to be helping us with some columns and doing these shows, whatever she wants to promote, create podcasts. And then Joe Don is going to be the same. We're going to be introducing him, talking about where his business is going, what the direction of his business is going, also what he believes in innovation and technology, where he believes the next 5 years should go, and then also talking about the content he'll be creating and the collaboration that we'll be doing together. And these are great shows, but one of my favorite shows, I've been after this person for about 5 years. He finally retired, or he fired himself. So we're going to tune in on July 10th at 1 p.m. for a special episode of the Bloom Show featuring Jim McCain, founder of 1-800-Flowers, as he reflects on his journey, impact, and what's next for the floral world. And I'm super proud of having him on board. Why? Because he gets on all these other big shows, and my little old show in the flower industry for the floral community, by the flower community. He's going to give us an hour of his time. We're going to be able to ask him questions. We're going to be able to chime in. And my best thing is I want to know his entrepreneurial story, right? That's really what I'm looking to find out, to tune in and ask him how it all started and just really chime in. But I've been trying to get him for 5 years. And when I saw him pop up that he fired himself, or someone said that he fired himself, I said, hey, now do you have time? And he said, yes. So persistence gets some great guests on the show. So I'm super excited about all those guests. It's been awesome. And it's only great and only made great with people like yourself too, Melinda, and the audience for chiming in and tuning in. So thank you, Melinda, for your time. Appreciate you so much.
Great. Thank you as well.
Thank you. Let's say our goodbyes. And 1, 2, 3. Wait. Goodbye. Take care.
The Bloom Show, if they connect them, bloom, a Bloom Show, if they connect